Good morning and welcome to the last press conference for the Democratic Labour Party for this year. This is our end-of-year press conference, and I want to welcome the viewers at home and online, and I'll also welcome our Caribbean brothers and sisters who will be following us online as well. Really, I want to start by saying Merry Christmas to everybody, as we will not be having a press conference for the rest of the year, and to wish you a little bit early, but to wish you all the best for the upcoming new year. So what we're going to do today, we're really going to recap some of the year, and we're going to look forward to what the party envisages for 2024, and to address some of the more pressing issues that are facing the country at this particular moment. Now, what I want to start with really is to look at where the Democratic Labour Party is, because I'm conscious that has been a conversation of the country on the call-in programs and in the media in terms of the state of the party since my re-election as president of the party. So I just want to give that a little bit of context for the media and really for the public of Barbados in terms of where we are. Now, the party has been, we can all appreciate, through some very difficult times. This year has been a very long and a hard year for the party and its march to rebuild. And I can report in a very positive way that we have turned a corner. Now, rebuilding a party is a very difficult task, and one of the things that I've come to realize is perhaps that the media and the general public do not appreciate where the party is. And I'll just give a classic example. I was interacting with a lady the other day, I'm not going to call her name, and I said, oh, I have to go to work. And she said, what are you talking about? How do you mean you got to work? Are you not the leader of the opposition? I was like, yeah, but the leader of the opposition doesn't get paid, so I have a day job. And she was like, she looked at me very surprised, as if for the first time there's a recognition that the persons managing and dealing with the Democratic Labour Party are doing two tasks. The first time really in the history of this country that an opposition leader, that is not the only single focus of an opposition leader. You had a situation where the former Prime Minister, formerly opposition leader Mayor Motley, had the advantage. People said she should walk up and down the place. Well, she could, because she was opposition leader. That was her only job. And in fact, she walked with the parliament, so she already had nothing to do but walk up and down Barbados. You had a situation where David Thompson was opposition leader. So the first time you have an extra parliamentary opposition leader who does not get the benefit of the office of opposition. And just another story. So someone recently asked me, so can I fit something into your diary? Who do I call? I was like, that's me. And they were like, how do you mean you do your own diary? Do you not have opposition secretary to support you? I was like, what are you talking about? No, we do not. The reality is, Democratic Labour Party is being called to perform particular tasks of an opposition in Barbados, but does not have the institutional framework that is normally associated with an opposition party. And I say that to say a big thank you to the General Secretary and the Secretariat and the volunteers, the hundreds of them, the people who willingly give their time, the two persons, one to my left and one to my right, all of the members of this party who are at great sacrifice to ensure that our democracy functions, to ensure that this party is part of that functioning democracy. And I'm saying that because I think there needs to be an appreciation and a thank you for that effort. Because to make a political party work is already a hard task. To make a political party work without the institutional framework normally associated with the opposition party, the opposition's office, the opposition's secretary, somebody to diarize, somebody to help organize events, we do not have. Furthermore, the government is refusing to allocate the subvention that the Democratic Labour Party should have, and that prevents and that provides other problems in terms of our function of our democracy. So when I saw something recently in one of the major daily newspapers saying that, you know, the Democratic Labour Party, Barbados has 99 problems, and the Democratic Labour Party should scrutinize them, and democracy is not one, it is laughable. That person obviously is missing a few points. In fact, they're missing a lot of points to recognize that actually, and if you analyze what we're going to do some of it today, our democracy is under threat. The democracy of Barbados is not working. And it was laughable in a very sad way because the very editorial of the newspaper, the front page, told us that the social partnership's falling apart. So you are telling the Democratic Labour Party not to focus on trying to strengthen not only the party, because that's a task ahead of us, but to strengthen the democracy of Barbados. You're telling us that we shouldn't be worried, or it's fine, focus on other things, which we do focus on the bread and butter issues, but the reality is our democracy is not functioning, and it has not been functioning properly since 2018. That is just where we are. Now, people have expectations of the Democratic Labour Party, which I understand. We have expectations of ourselves, but that can only work in partnership. You know, the Prime Minister talked about giving her the vote and watching her. That is not the mission that I want. I want you to give the vote to me, but I want you to come and work with me. I want to actually start a new ethos and a new thinking in politics. The only way that this democracy will work, the only way that the Democratic Labour Party will work, the only way that Barbados will work is if we all work together. There has to be an understanding that the Democratic Labour Party is not just Joy Street, it's not just the few people here in the executive. The party is the country, and the country is the party. Now, our supporters and our members have to engage and give of their all to the party, because it's not only about the survival of the party, it is about how does our democracy continue to function in the normal way that it should function. And we know that's not happening. We know that the government is failing in terms of consulting the people of Barbados on major issues. We know that the legislation has been botched many times. Think about the new national insurance, social security service. I mean, the whole bill had to be repealed, brought back to Parliament. There's so many examples of botched legislation. 2 years in, we still don't have a new republic constitution, but we announced we're a republic. All of these are the issues facing the country. On top of the economic issues, on top of the daily bread and butter issues, but part of the realization has to be that these issues are related to the bread and butter issues. So if your democracy is not functioning, your economy is not functioning, obviously there are going to be other issues at the other end in terms of displacement in schools that don't work, cost of living, the fact that there's a mental health crisis, all of the things, the fact that labor is not working, all of these are the things that we have to pay attention to. So I will not take lessons from anybody about what the Democratic Labour Party should and should not be doing. I am fully aware of where this party is. I am fully aware of what this party needs to do, but what I want also is for Barbadians to be aware of what the government is intentionally doing to destroy and harm the democracy by harming the Democratic Labour Party. Because when you try to hurt the Democratic Labour Party, whether you vote for it or not, you are hurting Barbados. That's just the reality, because we're a two-party system. Our systems do not function unless you have that dynamics of the push and pull. And we've realized that the systems haven't been functioning over the last going into 6 years because of that dynamics. The fact that half the legislation in Parliament is poorly drafted, there's no debates in Parliament, the fact there's nobody in Parliament to stop half the things that are happening. So, you know, we can get here, we can talk about these things, we can put them in the public domain, but we are not in Parliament. We can't hold up a debate in Parliament because we see the government's doing something wrong. The government will continue on its merry wrong way on many things, and we are not there to stop them. Now, if the people of the country want the democracy to function in the way that they're used to, they have to come to a realization they have to give the Democratic Labour Party a chance. They have to give it a chance again. They have to understand that the party is working hard to rebuild itself. The party is working hard to attract new members. And I say that in all honesty, I say that in all directness. The things that have been happening in here to make this machine function. I've talked about it to the membership. Perhaps now this is the time to talk to the people of this country about where we are. So just a short report. Over the last 12 months, we've managed to rebuild our headquarters, to bring it to commercial grade, to make it rentable. Because the reality is, how could you have a building where that is your home that does not reflect the pride that you want it to reflect? So we've worked on that. I'm not hiding anything from anybody. We had branches that weren't functioning. Been the general secretary and I took office. We have managed to rebuild most of those branches, and there are a couple outstanding. There are about 2 or so or 3 outstanding that we will be working on in the coming months to bring them back on stream. These are the state secrets. These are realities. People know this. But I am telling you what we're doing. We've managed to get them back. The candidate selection process will start in earnest from next week. The committee will be meeting, and we will be triggering that process to select new candidates for the next upcoming general election. The Democratic Labour Party has also managed to bring itself to a state where the party's bill payments and all of those things are now in a state of normalcy. The party is functioning. You call here, someone's going to answer that phone. There's an office now open from 9 to 5 p.m. every day. This is now a normal functioning machine, but to get it back to that place took effort. I want to publicly thank the people, all of the workers, the secretariat, the general secretary, the executive, the council, all of them for all of the hard work they've put in over the year. And some of them have put it in looking for no reward, looking for nothing, but they have put it in. And the people of Barbados deserve to know and understand that is what's happened. Because a party coming from 2 successive defeats, it takes tremendous effort to do it. And everyone here has a job. And I would challenge anybody to tell us that we are not working flat out. We work our 9-to-5 jobs like every other person in this country, and then after 5, we do another job, which is to manage the Democratic Labour Party to ensure that the democracy functions. So when people are sleeping, this party is still working on your behalf. We're not doing it because we want claps or praise, but you need to understand that is what we're doing, so that the expectations of what the party can produce, that can be managed, and also when the party challenges you and says, come on board to work with us, you understand that we actually mean that. We want you to work with us. Because as I said, I am not telling you to give me the vote and watch me. I am going to tell you to give me the vote and work with me, because that is the only way that we can rebuild the party and the country. Because as I've said this before, those 2 projects have to go together. Barbados is in a state. Let's not fool ourselves. Does that mean that everything in Barbados is wrong or this is some doom and gloom? No, but the majority of things are not working. We got more potholes than road. In fact, the road, we really can't see the road because we just got potholes. We have a situation where Ann Hill, St. John Primary, Luther Thorne, Lester Vaughan, St. Stephen's, All Saints, literally it seems that every day there's a new front page with a school that has an environmental problem. Yet the Minister of Education is silent, is absent, is missing, and is is the worst Minister of Education, bar the last one. Because we thought the last one was the worst, but no, we've got the worst. And they took the last one for education, put her in roadworks, and we now end up with more potholes than road. So it doesn't seem that there's any competence among those 2. And the reality is, why isn't the Minister of Education relieved of her duty? You had the Springer Memorial debacle. You had the IADB survey. You have all of these 6 or 7 schools that I just mentioned with environmental problems. You have the fact that teachers are under stress. They don't have the resources. Teachers are buying basic supplies to manage their schools. All of these things, and you're telling me the Minister of Education is still in her job? These things are hard to fathom. And the reality is, parents also, and I implore parents, tell them, if you are at a school and you realize that these schools have environmental issues, pull one of the children out the school. I am very proud of the parents at St. John's Primary School. They're right. And if it's happening at other schools, stop staying silent. We have to end this cloak of silence that is covering this country. Speak out. If it ain't working, march, sick out, stand home. Because the reality is you are not going to get the change that you want unless you are part of the change. Yes, the Democratic Labour Party is here. Yes, we can marshal the troops. Yes, we can put out policies. Yes, we can defend you, but you also have to be part of that process, because that is what the new politics is about. And in many ways, it's about reclaiming your country and reclaiming your voice, because the days of watching the government are over. It is time to have some action. It is time not only for our membership, it is time for the country to engage itself. It is time that you, if you're a school and you take your child to school and the school got mold, you know what you're going to do? You're going to pull your child to that school. That is just it. If the teachers go to school and they ain't got the facilities, or they ain't got the paper, or they ain't got the crayons, well, you know what happened in that day? Well, I guess the teaching will not be happening. Because we have to advocate and we have to get up and do things for ourselves as well. You know what the Lord tell you? The Lord has helped those who help themselves. He's saying that we start helping ourselves to recognize that we can make this country better, but we can do it together. So you have all of these situations with the current schools. And I've seen proposals to say, you know, there needs to be a committee for dealing with the infrastructural issues at schools. And, you know, I understand where the parents' right advocates groups are coming from, and I applaud them for that effort. I applaud them for that suggestion. But the reality is, having myself sat on a school board, being an educator, that is not the solution. You do not need any more committees in governments. The reality is there are structures inside of the ministry that should be monitoring these situations. There are persons tasked with this. And I bet you, I will put money on it, you ask them what the problem is, they don't have the resources or they don't have the staff. So instead of looking to create more institutions and more organizations, what we really need to do is to look to see what is going on in our civil service. Why aren't people working? Why aren't you delivering the things that you should deliver? So, for example, I went the other day to pay to get my driver's license, get the new card. One teller at the thing, the line snaking through the door, everybody complaining. Now, it's easy for me to blame, and people can probably curse the teller, but it's not their fault. The question you have to ask, why is there only one teller? That's the first question. So therefore, that means there's a resource issue. That means there's a management issue. So we always talk about civil service reform. We talk about the civil service isn't performing, but the question is why? So if somebody ain't getting to work late, and you say, come, Betty, come, you sit down next to me. What's going on, Betty? What's going on? Why you come to work late? Or why you don't come in on a Wednesday? And you talk to Betty, and you realize, actually, Betty's a caregiver, because Betty's mother got Alzheimer's. She's the only body that can take care of her, but she can be there. And then you understand, then you have to put resources around to support persons to be able to do their job. This is often the problem I find with this government. There's a blame factor for everything without trying to drill down, why are we in the spaces, are we at the places that we're at? And therefore you can ask, what does that mean, or what would a Democratic Labour Party government do differently? And that's a fair question. Everybody's saying, what are you going to do? You know, Ronnie, you just tell me, for example, you could tell me all the problems in schools. You're going to tell me that the debt is 14.6 billion. You're going to tell me the government has borrowed the fastest amount of foreign debt in the modern history of Barbados government, $5.6 billion. All of these things, you're going to tell me that the government just took out 25 million US, 50 million Barbados dollars for a loan for Kingston Oval, but you just lift seven schools that got environmental problems. So where are the priorities? What this comes down to, and some of this stuff is not what people consider sexy politics, but this is how it works. You want a country to work, sometimes it is just old-fashioned, boring, hard work. They're in a spin, they're in a fancy posters, they're in a catch lines. It is just about being able to understand and work. So you want the country to work. How do you get it to work? How do you fix all of these things that we're talking about? And the first thing you have to recognize, what is the value system that drives the Democratic Labour Party? Because people say, what is the Democratic Labour Party about? That's a fair question. What drives this party? What makes these two people, the General Secretary, this staff, all of these volunteers that I talked about, come in here every single day, and then on weekends, because don't forget you got the weekend activities, we got baby constituencies, the Christmas party, visiting the old people, repairing the house, somebody call you for food hampers, helping a family that needs assistance, helping kids. What drives all of these people? None of them getting paid, because they're the money around to pay anybody. All of these are volunteers who pulled their pockets to make this organization work for the people of Barbados. What is driving them? Simple. The value system of this party tells all of us that we are our brother and sister's keeper. It's that simple, you know. People get all this fancy talk. It is real simple. Because that is the only reason that we get up to come here. Because there is no other reason to come here. Every day we get cursed on Brass Stars. Every day. Not on Brass. Somebody cursing. Somebody writing something on Facebook. Somebody sending you private messages, telling you what somebody obviously. All sorts of things has happened. You know, politics is not, and it's not that politics in the Sunday school. That is not even it. Every day we go through these things, but we go through them because genuinely, because as I just said, we're not being paid, we're in the glory, we don't have a support mechanism. We do this because we sincerely believe that this party can be good for this country. And that we have a part to play in that. That we genuinely want to make Barbados a better place for our children and for their children and for our friends and our family and for everybody in this country. Because that is what drives us. That is what drives us to take the lashes, to take the cussing, to take whatever that we get. All of it. And there's a lot of it. That is what drives us when we go to the supermarket. And the man said, well, you got a rough job. You got enough to do. We look into you. That's a lot. I go to shop. And somebody come up to you and say, Ronnie, I look into you. And how you got there, Felicia, I like she met sure. Walter, I look in. You got. Think about that. We are bearing the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the failures of all of these people. The expectations that this institution has to perform and do good for them. That's a lot. That's a lot every single day we wake up to that. But we still do it because we're still here. We've come to the end of the year. We've made it. We've not limped to the end of the year. We are walking proud into the end of this year. And next year, we're going to be running next year. But it's a step process. So what I want to talk a little bit about the economy. I'm going to talk a little about education, but maybe a lot about education. And I want to talk about electricity. So let me start with electricity, because the reality is, and this goes to my central point about the government and its democracy, and why really when we say that the democracy is in trouble and we worry about the democracy, it should be a worry of the major newspapers, the major media houses, and it should be a worry for Barbadians. So I was actually somewhat really disappointed. And I'm sure my advisors are probably looking at me, Ronnie, don't do it. You know, but I speak truth to power. And I just tired of foolishness. And the reality is, the disappointment that a newspaper can look at the Democratic Labour Party, one of the oldest political parties in the Caribbean, to tell us that we should not be concerned about the state of the Barbadian democracy because Barbados got 99 problems, but democracy is not one. As if that was meant to be funny, as if it was meant to be some slap down or a throwaway line. The democracy in Barbados is in trouble. I said that in the beginning, and now let's go through how. So the government of Barbados, or the Barbados Labour Party regime, because sometimes I can't tell the difference, because I don't think they know the difference, recently introduced an amendment to the Utilities Act of Barbados. It's section 37, and I want to read this to you in full, because I want you to understand what your government, because it is your government, what your government is doing to you, and whose interests your government has, because that needs to be clear and upfront in the minds of Barbadians. The reality is, all you see now in Barbados belongs to the Barbados Labour Party. It is time to stop. Cut it out. The Democratic Labour Party is not, and I will not take any blame for anything. Stop it. If you come to me and you step to me with that foolishness, I can give it to you as good as you're going to give to me. So take note of that. You have a government that's trying to move an amendment to basically take away your power as a consumer when it comes to utility regulation in this country. Let me read the amendment. I'm going to read it in full, so bear with me. The minister may, on the recommendation of the commission or his own initiative, exempt the supply of electricity from a renewable energy resource by a renewable energy producer from the application of all or any of the provisions of this act, where the minister is satisfied in all circumstances that the exemption is required in the public interest. What this really means is that no rate or service regulation for an exempted electricity provider if the minister feels like it. Y'all understand that? This amendment will mean that a minister can determine that there is no regulation for an energy provider in Barbados. That they can get around the issues of regulation. So what just happened with Tricia Watson and those interveners would not happen. So the fact that those interveners, and we thank them, the Democratic Labour Party, I want on record, thanks Tricia Watson, thanks David Simpson, thanks those interveners for the job they've done. What just happened in terms of them winning that case to stop that rate hike, that will not happen. This is where this country is. The reality is, what this amendment will do, it will undermine the Fair Trading Commission. It's being used to make the Fair Trading Commission useless and redundant and defunct. Basically, the Barbados Labour Party regime is obviously unhappy with the way that the fair trading decision went against Emira. And we know this is the case because we had the previous Minister of Energy, Kerry Simmons, on record in 2023 telling Bajans pretty much that they have to accept if electricity rates go up, and being on the side of Emira. We had the Prime Minister making pronouncements back then too that the cat and mouse games between the FTC and the Light and Power have to stop. What cat and mouse games are you talking about? That is how democracy functions. They make an application for a rate increase, the FTC reviews it, we, the public, me, you, all of we consumers, we intervene and we say, well, actually, this ain't on me benefit. There's a discussion, there's a ruling, you comply. It's that simple, you know. That's how democracy works. How do you mean it's a cat? You are basically telling me the functions of democracy is a distraction for you. You don't want democracy? Because you want to be able to wake up, call somebody, shout down the phone, do this now. That's how this is work. That's not how it works. So you have a situation where a government is trying to say that the FTC, because the FTC provides an opportunity for interventions by ordinary Barbadian men and women when it comes to what their electricity rates will look like, the government is trying to say that that's affecting the process and the functioning of energy development in Barbados. Foolishness. The role of that is to ensure that we are protected. So when Tricia Watson and those interveners went out there, that was protecting us. And on top of that, the Democratic Labour Party joins because we don't got to do everything. I say to people, oh, the Democrats, why you leading on this? Why you doing that? There are other people out there we can support. That's new politics. Everything got to come to a political party. We can support and say, we support and we stand with the parents in St. John. We support and we stand with Tricia Watson and those interveners. So I support and I stand with her call. That didn't give me back my money though. I want ham money. I want ham over Christmas. I want to put up a Christmas tree. All of we children want a little present. It's been a rough year, cost of living high. We want back our money. And I can sure ain't gonna be no $25 because their rate increases was rough. Bills went from $100 suddenly to $300 for two old people in the house. We had some of me members here come and talk about it. How he bill went up, and we don't want to be old people. Steve, you know what he's talking about. He frugal, but he bill was still through the roof. I used to wonder how he had the bill so low in the first place. I said, we used to turn on your lights. He said, yes, we keep them on. But bills went up. So that's serious money that got to come back to either. And we ain't hear nothing, not a peep from the minister, not a peep from anybody else. And like the power was some bogus case that they want to carry to the high courts. Accept the decision of the FTC, give me back the money, move on. You're wrong, you've been found wrong. It's that simple. That's democracy. That's the way it should function. Talking about democracy, add to this, we have not got the election report back from the last election. You can even got an election report yet? No reports. We ain't get the IDB report yet? We get that yet? No. We get the report from Spring School yet? We get the report from St. John's School? We get the report from Ann Hill School? Nothing. But you can got a major newspaper telling me that democracy is not a problem? Telling the Democratic Labour Party that democracy ain't a problem? I mean, look, let me tell you something, right? 2024, gonna be psyops in this country. All understand that. As my mother would tell you, put that in your pipe and smoke it. Because this ain't going down the way that people feel that this has to go down. We will not be two-faced. We will not be hypocritical. We will stand on the side of what we believe always is right and always in the best interest of the people of this country. Because at the end of the day, it is about the people of this country. So that's electricity. Then you got basically the economy. Now, we had the update from the governor of the central bank, who I remembered, I warned clearly, you know, he's got to take a cussing. But, truth has a way of always being true. I remember this party warned. We said, the governor of the central bank will not be good for Barbados. People said, oh, you don't want nobody. I said, it ain't got nothing to do with his qualifications. It has nothing to do with him. It has to do that you were the architect of the government's BERT program and the government's austerity measures. You're flipping your hat now to become almost the monitor of the things that you created. Therefore, it will be impossible for you to report bad news. Because how you going to report on yourself and say, the things that I came up with, but they ain't really working. That BERT program thing, they ain't really working out. You see that debt restructuring that we take really $2 billion from the NIS? That's because the NIS to go bankrupt. All the things that they did, they ain't working out. And then you put him as governor, what do you expect to happen? So you got a governor parroting, if the reports in the media are correct, that Barbados is the 5th fastest growing economy after the Prime Minister come with the foolishness. Nobody so far has found a credible document that says Barbados is the 5th fastest growing economy in the world. And it's almost impossible to be the 5th fastest growing economy when tourism has not even fully recovered to 2019 rates. Everybody in the region is doing really well. But let me give you the numbers because this is real stuff, right? And you got to understand that we don't make this up. We do not make this up. So our tourism performance continues to be below par. We are still not back to 2019 numbers. Meanwhile, Jamaica's 6.7% increase over 2019. Grenada, not only we talk about Grenada, because I know Grenada's a sore point still. Grenada, up by 3%. St. Martin, 31%. Domrep, 18%. Aruba, 8%. All of these things. So if we are not back to 2019 numbers, how in God's name or on his green earth we could be the 5th fastest growing economy when the very engine to drive the economy is still not back to where it is? I even think I'll come with a special logic to debunk that point. That's it. It's real simple. If tourism that drives the economy is not performing to standard, how use the fast? How? By borrowing? Because that's the only thing that we fast at this moment. Borrowing and debt and inflation. Because I can't understand it. And if maybe the governor and the prime minister got some kind of special report that we don't know about, they're more than welcome to share it with us. They're more than welcome to share it with us. So let me look at this. So despite 10 quarters of consecutive economic growth, right? When you adjust that for inflation, the Barbados economy is still smaller than what it was in 2019. So even when you concede, yes, there's growth, that growth still has not caught up to get us back to where we were previously. That's just the reality of where Barbados is. So what the governor did not tell us is that after contracting by 12.7% in 2020 and again by 1.3% in 2021, the economic growth last year and so far this year therefore represents underperformance. At the time when most economies were emerging from COVID in 2020, Barbados was still contracting. That's just our reality, And why were we still contracting? Because the government had not planned properly post-pandemic. Why every other country's economy growing? How Jamaica out front, Aruba, Cayman, everybody in the Caribbean, Grenada, St. Lucia, all of these countries that were often regarded as followers to Barbados, we are now behind them. Accept that reality. Why? Because they had better governments that were better at planning to get them out of the post-COVID slump. While we had a government that was, I know what it was busy doing. I can't tell you what it was busy doing because we still can't see the results. The school's still in the state, the road's still in the state, hospital wait times up. They fixed the incinerator yet. No. You can be a hospital for an incinerator. The dump, as I understand, got another 1 or 2 years in its life cycle. That's another problem that waiting to hit me. All of these are issues, but you flying about the world leading on climate change. How about leading on issues here? How about focusing on the people of this country? So you have a country, an economy that is still not back to where it was. And don't let me start with Leah. Because the government of Barbados, bad decision, and let me lay the blame where it should go. It is the Barbados Labour Party government that is responsible for the destruction of Leah. Their decision to abandon Liat. You could see a David Thompson doing that to Liat. And let me be fair, you could see Owen Arthur leaving Liat by itself. Two of them, let me just deal with two of them. Two of the ones that pass. You could see David or Owen leaving Liat to flounder. No, not only because from a principal point of regional integration, but from a reality that if you can connect the Caribbean, you're adding, they reckon, about 300,000 jobs regionally and $5 billion in GDP. That's what we are losing out because there's no air connection. But then, as a government, you gonna go and pay for seats from Cayman. How does that help interregional trade? How does that help us to get around to go and visit my comrade to go and visit some of her family in St. Lucia? Or if I want to go and spend Christmas at her house. She didn't invite me yet, but I invited myself. I said, come in St. Lucia with your family. How does that help us to get home? But you gotta take days. You gotta go up, down. I had to miss a friend wedding this year because there was no connection. These are real, I told my stories. These are real things that happen to people in the Caribbean. But you are going to go and pay money, and this is not against the what you call them now, the air agreements that you would have in these countries, because these air agreements where you pay for the empty seats, that is part of our tourism product. So nobody's slamming that. We're not pretending that that does not happen and that has not happened previously in Barbados. But you are doing it at the expense of a regional airline that needs our help. That's where the money should be going. So you got Cayman Airways coming here to Barbados, and this is some of the data that has been provided to me. Flights here. So we've had 3 flights so far. 32 people, 24 people, 16 people. You know how many people the plane is carrying? Anybody want to make a guess? 160. So let me get that. 32 people, 24 and 16. So who is paying the bill for the shortfall for all of them seats that nobody did in? Guess who? You. You at home watching. You's who paying that bill. And if you're paying that bill, what does that mean? That there's less money to do what? Fix Ann Hill. Fix St. John Primary. Fix Luther Thorne. Fix Lester Vaughan, and that pothole that the front of my road. And that my car went through earlier this year and burst out the tires and cost me about $400. Got to replace the tires, had to get the rim beat out. That's what everybody's going through. Every day, this is the things that we're going through. But you're going to be spending money. So it's about priorities. It's about what are your priorities for Barbados. Then you come with education reform. Everybody that's sensible telling you, you had ambassadors, you had professors of education, you had what Barbadians would call men of letters, you had myself, even if you don't rate myself, you got myself, you got all kind of people telling you middle schools are not good for Barbados. The research suggests that they do not work, they are going to be failures. You have Bermuda dropping them. You got America and the US, and the UK trying to get away from them. Why are you bringing them here? I want to know the ministry. Look at the document here. Fancy document, real pretty and glossy. I wonder who printed it, and I wonder how much money they get paid for it. But real pretty. Who laid it out? But you're telling me that you want to bring a concept that every sensible person in this country is telling you is a failure, and you want to bring a two-tier school system. Why? What wrong with you listening here? Are you only got a mouth at the start? Because if all of we telling you the same thing, you mean that nobody insensible enough in the ministry to say, okay, we've heard you, we can go sit down and abandon this idea. We got to think about this ain't making sense. Because something got to be wrong with all of you then. Every single expert, read the newspaper, every single expert is telling you this middle school thing is not something that we should bring here. That the focus needs to be on primary education. I was talking to a teacher yesterday. They need resources. They need trained teachers at primary school. We used to take any and everybody and throw them in the primary school. That's where the focus should be. You should have to be a trained teacher to teach in primary school. Increase the salaries at that level. Those are our most valued teachers. Because if we get it right at primary, it can come through the system better. Yes, 11 plus needs to go, we understand that. But the 11 plus often is a spotlight on the problems in the system. Because if you do the 11 plus and you get a particular set of grades, the 11 plus is not necessarily the problem, it's the problem within itself because of the way it divides up and streams children. But the 11 plus is showing there are issues in that learning process. So why aren't we focusing on primary education? So you got a whole document here, whole document. And basically, there is nothing that tells me that you're rebuilding primary schools, you're outfitting them in the way that they're done. You're going to provide the counselors, you're going to provide the teachers, you're going to provide the support for parents. What about the reading programs? What about the literacy programs? I was talking to a mother. She got work in the hotel industry. She loves her children. But when she get home at 10 o'clock, at 11 o'clock at night, her boyfriend or the grandparent had the child there. Maybe the body had the time to read to it. How that can work? Has anybody sat down and talked about a program? How about a program called First Start? That's what the Democratic Labour Party would do. First Start, so we introduce reading programs to help these mothers. But you know what the other thing you gotta realize? If you introduce a reading program, who is most likely to attend that reading program? Not the people that need it, bet your bottom dollar. It will be middle class parents. So where you gonna put a reading program? I like it, but you put it at the National Library on a Saturday? Who can drive to the National Library on a Saturday? You live in St. Lucie or St. Philip. You work in the hotel industry. You come home. These are realities. This is what government should sit there and think about. So if you got a reading program, where do you have to put that reading program? In the community. It got to be in the community. And on top of that, then you have to have after-school programs. You got to have something for the kids to do after school. So between 3 to 5, you have to build in extra activities. Because every child ain't got a parent that can carry to swimming. Every child ain't got a parent that can be able to carry to violin lessons. So there has to be a built-in program where every child is able to do some kind of activity every single day. Something. Because the parents want to do well by their children. But if you work in the hotel sector, let's be realistic, you get home at 10 or 11 at night. What going on? Ain't that is a bad parent, but you also want to provide. You got to feed your children. They want clothes, they want food. You got to pay the bills. So you have to have support. So you get foolishness from the Prime Minister about get more children. Where is the support? You got extra reading programs. You got book vouchers. You got child care vouchers. Who can take care of these children? You're gonna give me a year off of paternity and maternity leave with pay or some 3/4 pay, some form of pay. With the child tax credits. Nothing, but you gonna talk about get more children? We can get everyone. All this stuff is support. So when they take value system again, be your brother and sister's keeper. So when we talk about policies, we're not just randomly talking things. They're coming from a place here and they're coming from there. This is the country that we face. So I just want you to understand the value system of the Democratic Labour Party. Know that we are on your side. Know that we are working hard day in, day out to make Barbados better. Know that we understand what you're going through. Know that we're making the suggestions, the policy suggestions as best as we can and as we see that will work for you. Know that the candidates are coming next year. Know that the party is revving up and we need you alongside us. So I can tell you, give me the vote and work with me. That is what we want from you, the people of Barbados, because this is a contract, this is a partnership of equals, and this is a partnership where we will work together to fulfill the vision of Barbados. And that vision would mean a focus on education, a focus on making government work again, so efficiency, a focus on a new economy to bring jobs for Barbadians, and basically a focus on ensuring that there's a good healthcare system, a basic healthcare system to provide for Barbadians. So I will now hand it over to my colleague, Felicia.
Okay, good morning, the media. Thank you for coming. And of course, you've heard your president, and one of the things that really touched us is that no matter what they say about the Democratic Labour Party, no matter what is written or what is said, we show up. It is our responsibility, and we take that kind of responsibility to a very high level. Some of the issues that we have recognized throughout the entire year were related not only in terms of the economy, but also in terms of education. But a very dear part that we have very recently been discussing is the issue dealing with youth. And how do we deal with our youth, young persons within the society, what we'd call the youth economy. We're seeing the Deputy Prime Minister spoke about mental health and the mental health issues that young persons are facing. We're also seeing an increase in youth suicides. And I think it's a very important area that we have to look at this administration and how it has functioned. These are not issues that just happened overnight. These are issues that research has shown that since 2016 we've had problems with youth unemployment. We've had youth dealing with various types of social and, of course, economic issues. We've seen research in the UNICEF have shown that in 2016 that 32% of young persons in Barbados live in poverty. And these are very serious matters because we're dealing with a society that, although that we believe that we're doing fairly well, as some of the media, some of their ministers have said, we're seeing that there's a segment of our society that we need to place very close attention to. So what we're seeing in terms of the very high increases in mental health of our persons is really the consequences of what we have continued to allow within our society and what we have not taken consideration of. So the very factor dealing with adolescents, youth adolescents, not only in terms of the poverty rate, and we could imagine poverty brings about in terms of how individuals and how they have the ability to cope with that as well. The research also shows that adolescents between the ages of 10 to 19, those who live with female-headed households, were nearly twice as likely to live in poverty as opposed to adolescents living in male households, which is very interesting in terms of the gender disparity and gender equalities within our society. So the very factor that we need to look at in terms of not only in terms of the mental health of young persons, but also in terms of youth employment. In Barbados, 31% of youth were employed in the labor force as compared to 86% to adults. So such matters is very important. So again, we are appealing to the various sectors. We're not only appealing to, in terms of youth, the youth, meaning the ministry responsible for youth development, but also the social protection of those persons. What kinds of intervention that is required for them? We understand that those crises of the young persons is greatly needed, but what kinds of provisions are we making accessible for those persons, because it's a very serious matter. This is our future generation. How are we going to deal with it? So yes, we're seeing the intervention is there, the medical intervention is there, but what other kinds of intervention is necessary in terms of employment? What is the government doing in terms of youth employment? What is the government doing in terms of mentorship of those young persons? In terms of employment, are the individuals, the young persons that have left school last year and those that are coming this year, what is going to be happening to those individuals? And I think it's very important that we look at that as well. So even in terms of the gender disparity, again, we're seeing that the average individual in terms of the youth, in terms of males as opposed to females, in terms of how are able to be employable for those young persons is very important. And we can almost imagine post-COVID what has happened to those persons. The majority of those individuals, young persons, may have lost their jobs. So it's very important that we look at those kinds of interventions and what is required and what is necessary, and having those programs. And of course, we can also understand that we're not only dealing with adolescents and mental health, but we can almost imagine those young persons in those schools that are facing those challenges and how they feel in those various environments, being pulled out of school, not being able to access the school, not being able to access their friends, and all those kinds of concerns are very, very problematic. Another matter that I think is very important, I think it has raised the alarm quite a lot, is in terms of the Samoa Agreement. And I think it's very important that the government, and we have spoken entire, and what the Democratic Labour Party have seen primarily is the lack of public consultation on those policies. The government believes that if the Democratic Labour Party does not receive a subversion, that is still a subvention, that it should still show up. They should still do the job that is required of them. But as our president has shown, it takes a lot of hard work. We have to show up regardless of how we wake up. We had a meeting last night, we got home after 11, but we had to be here. The dedication that it takes for us to speak and be the advocate on the people's rights and citizens' rights, it's very important that we take that very seriously in and of itself. So the reality is that we look forward in working with the government. We look forward in working with citizens. We look forward in working with social partners and, of course, social, civil societies. But the reality is that we need more public consultations on those issues. We're seeing a lot of pieces of legislation has been passed without the public knowledge. People are not aware that certain legislations are being passed, very much like what we saw with the Child Protection Bill, or what we're seeing with the Samoa Agreement, where a number of those issues, those international agreements that we have signed in and how will affect us in the domestic spaces and our domestic laws. So it's very important that we, as a Democratic Labour Party, continue to remain focused and that we remain resilient, because we will need it for the next few years, because the reality is that we are working hard, but we are doing it because of our ethics. We are doing it because it is our responsibility and it's our role. That whether we're in Parliament or outside Parliament, we'll continue to do the work that is required of us to be doing the checks and balances of the government and to ensure that there is a level of consciousness that is being taken place when you're dealing with the various types of policies that are being placed. Also, we have to look at in terms of citizens' rights, rights of children, and of course, most importantly, parental rights. Gender rights are very important. We have to look at all citizens within our societies and how best that we can serve them and uphold their rights as a society. We want to ensure that the government says what it does and do what it says it would do, and so that we have to hold them accountable, but we cannot do it alone. We need the support of the public. We need the support of citizens so that when they come to us, that we are able to defend them, we are able to stand up for them, and we are able to do what is required of us as an opposition party. I don't know if you want to add some more, my brother?
Good morning to the press and those who are following this press conference online. Like the President said in his remarks, his opening remarks, I wish convey our best wishes to all those who are listening to us and who would probably read the comments tomorrow. A blessed and healthy Christmas season, and hopefully we will have a better year next year. The truth be told, though, that this has been a very tumultuous year for the workers in this country. We have lived from one episode of ineptness to the next. We have seen workers in Barbados going on strike. We have seen increases in persons walking off the job. We have seen increases in where the trade unions are not ably representing the workers and the members. We have seen a hopelessness creep into the workplace. We see also hopelessness amongst the youth who are looking for jobs and can't find them, at least good-paying jobs. We are seeing an exodus out of this country to places to Canada and other areas where young Barbadians, young bright Barbadians, are going to seek employment. We are seeing a breakdown in all of the public services that we got to understand and to like and to appreciate in our health sector, our transportation sector. We are seeing all of these things coming together. And let me explain that all of these impact on the worker. So when we talk about labor, it is not only about going to work and earning a wage, but it's those factors that surround the person who has to get up every morning, send the children to a school that is not functioning. And you hear the president and my sister spoke about that. It is about the worker who has to get up on mornings and stay at the bus stop for 5:30 to catch a bus at 9 o'clock. And then when he get work, his pay is docked. And if you do it too regularly, he might also lose his job. We are talking about the worker who has a daughter or mother or father or some sibling who is ill and is going to the hospital, and then she have to be down there 3 and 4 days because they have not been able to see a doctor. Your waiting times are too long. We have workers who would have themselves who might be suffering from serious illnesses of cancer, and they go to the hospital, and then you hear that the machine that they're supposed to use in order to monitor them and to help them get well is not working. And if they need that kind of help, they will have to go to a private institution where they do not have the money to pay, so they suffer in silence. These are the issues that are confronting the worker in this country. But to make it even worse, we have had earlier this year, for the first time in the history of this country, where an employer locked in the employees under the watchful eye of the labor movement, of their labor representative. This is an amazing thing. It has never happened. And the employer normally locks out the employee. Well, you don't lock them inside. Well, we had that in Barbados. And everything seems to be going awry in this country. Every morning we wake up, there is a problem. Every morning we wake up, there's a different issue. And it's just mounting and mounting. We get fairy promises that this would happen and this, the next thing will happen. They do not happen. The president spoke about the rate increase. The Barbados Light and Power is now back again, asking for another rate increase. Clearly, the worker in this country cannot carry it. And for those persons who are willing to stand up and to intervene on our behalf, you are putting restrictions within an act to stop them from doing it. No. Explain this to me. Who is the person or persons who should be looking after our interests? A piece of legislation goes to the Parliament, an important piece of legislation dealing with national insurance. It was discussed in the House of Parliament. Not 5 persons got up and spoke on it. And this is a piece of legislation that's going to affect every worker in this country. And these are the same persons, these representatives, who represent constituencies that have workers that will be affected. They said absolutely nothing. Yet it was passed. And now, 4 weeks later, or more, a month and a half later, you bring back a different thing. You repeal the first one, and you bring back another one. unknown to Barbadians again. Because this second act was not discussed with anybody. Nobody knew. Nobody knows that the age of retirement, the age to get the national insurance pension, don't go on to 68. By 20, 30, 40, or something like that, by 68. That wasn't discussed with you. You're contributing to the fund. But you destroy the fund by removing almost $1.3 billion out of it. Then you put the onus on the backs of the workers to say, fix it. Then you increase the age, you didn't tell them anything. But you know the most remarkable thing about this again? Is that this thing was done by stealth. You go to the Senate on a Wednesday. Independence Day is on Thursday. So it goes on Wednesday. Not one member of the government side, the senators that represent the government, spoke on it. If not for, thank God for Sister Monique Tate and Dr. Hines and Crystal Drake said, if not for them highlighting it, nobody in Barbados would have known. But it was taken and passed, assented to. That was by the Wednesday, the Thursday, the bank holiday, Independence Day. Independence Day. And we're not twinning Independence Day, no Republic Day. The people of this country says Independence Day. If you want a Republic Day, choose your own day. Okay? But on the eve of independence, where people in this country fought for the liberation, a country, a party that says that they have the interests of workers at heart, goes behind their back, introduces a piece of legislation unknown to them. And by the Friday, the 1st of December, the Minister of Labor goes on national television and announced that finally, national insurance has transitioned now to a board calling itself the National Insurance Security Service. And some friend of mine said to me, it really should have been the National Insurance Subterfuge Service because it was done by subterfuge. That is the harsh reality that we in this country is being faced with. So when we hear the talk about, oh, we are going to look after you, and we are looking after the workers in this country. No, you're not. You're looking after yourself. There are more people in the public service as soon as they reach 60 are opting to go home. And that is a fact. And the reason for that? Because people are unhappy, they're being victimized, they're being ridiculed every day within the public service. And because the other thing is that when the delivery of public services are not working, what the politicians do? They look for the scapegoat. They look for the scapegoat, but this is the worker because they can't defend themselves. They don't have the unions to defend them. That is the reality. So what is happening for next year? I'll tell you what will happen for next year. We're going to see the restructuring now. We cannot put it off any longer. The restructuring of the SOEs in this country. And the restructuring of the SOEs do not mean that government is going to be providing added employment for people. Because we allowed, and this is another problem, I must say this here to the press, a statement was made when the BAMC is being restructured, or they said they're going to restructure it. And they said to the country, it would only affect 367 people. I think that was the total. But do you know that within the BAMC itself, and this is only the persons who are permanently employed, there are a number of persons who work in BAMC who are temporary. And there are also a large amount of persons who work in BAMC seasonally as well. And has been doing it for the last 20 years. So the total amount of persons we are talking about is well over 600 people. But I tell you 300. They have not said how this thing is going to work. They tell you that there will be shareholders in a new company. They never tell you how you will become a shareholder in this new company. A letter was issued, a very barren letter. This is what is going to happen. But there's nothing detailed in it as to how it is going to come about. And we still have to see. workers are going to work every day and still not certain what will be happening to them. And I'm saying that something the press need to dig a little further. Ask those questions. Why only 360? It has to be more. And that is the reality. So the SOEs are coming. And I keep telling the brothers and sisters that work in these organizations, if you have reached pensionable age and you have in the required amount of years, opt out early and get your pension. I'm going to look straight in the camera. I'm going to repeat what I said. If you have reached the pensionable age, and you have having the required amount of years, please, I'm begging you, opt for your pension and your gratuity. Because what I'm seeing happening, there is no guarantee. There is no guarantee that somebody's going to be waiting there for you. If you can get your entitlements now, get them and leave the people place. You see this whole national insurance thing? That is another, they have been placed on this, in the space, in national space. So this is the best thing that happened to Barbados. And they tell the worker, they say to you, almost 95% of the workers agreed. But what they didn't tell you is that 95% of those persons were threatened. If you don't sign on, you ain't got a job. If you do not sign on, you do not have a job. So people want the employment, so they sign on. They didn't tell you that. But maybe you should go and ask some of the people in national insurance what it is. And up to today, the unions who were part of the NUPW especially, who represent the people in national insurance, and would have advised them to sign on, are now retracting and saying they need a meeting with government. They need a meeting with government to look at the conditions of service for the employees. I have never heard such madness in my life. The National Insurance is not the first entity in this country that has transitioned from a government entity to a statutory board. We did the airport. And when we did the airport, we made certain that everything was in place before persons signed off or decided they want to go someplace else. This is not the first time. But here's a union instructing people to sign on to something, and then we will try to look at how the contract looks and the conditions of service, and we will have a meeting with government to see how we will fix this and some nonsense. It's unfortunate. And so I will say this. It is up to the Democratic Labour Party to continue to look after the rights of workers in this country, because certainly the unions are not doing it. And we will ever be a voice to make certain that the rights of the worker in this country is not trampled, that they are not unfair, because we have to be able to protect them. And like I said before, everything that happens in this country affects the working class. Everything. If it's poor health, working class. Bad transportation, working class. Increase in crime, the working class. It affects everything that you do. When the sister spoke just now about mental health. This is not bringing tears to the school. I have a friend who's a psychiatrist. I know what she said to me. She said, Walter, there are not enough hours within a day to see the number of persons that are seeking help from her. That is a fact. And it's not only young people. It is not only young people. There are elder persons in this society who are under immense pressure, suffering from depression, from different types of mental health. And some people believe that when we talk about mental health, especially among young people, they're on drugs. Most of the time, they're not on drugs. Most of the times, they just can't cope. Most of the time, parents can't cope. Most of the times, and we knew this for a long time, We introduced, and I'm going to finish here now, the government introduced a policy within the Ministry of Education talking about eating healthy. But if you ask children or you go to schools, they will tell you what they are feeding the children. There's nothing healthy about it. And then you want to force parents to buy particular foods that you think is healthy. The problem with that is they can't afford it. They just can't afford it. There are many children in Barbados who that school meals was the only proper meal they would have had in a day. And that is being withdrawn from them because what they're having, and you say in it all the time, children are not eating the food. They're leaving it because it's not healthy. It's not tasty, it's not healthy. And these are the harsh realities. So if you ask me how this year was, and I'm going to end here, it was a tumultuous year for labor. There is nothing to show that workers in this country have enjoyed a better year than last year. And the question remains, are you better off now than you were in 2018? Are you better off? Can you pay your bills? Can you look after your children? Can you look after yourself? That is the question that we need to ask. And I would hope in 2024 that we will see some silver lining. But I know that silver lining will only come about as the Democratic Labour Party continue to pressure government into doing what is right and what is just.
If I may just add, and I think it's important to just continue on that position that you spoke about, and I think it's important that the government start thinking of putting family first. Because the issues that we're seeing is the failing in the human services of this country. It has been failing for a while now, and we can see the consequences of poor policy development, poor policy intervention from the various ministries that is dedicated to look at the family unit and to ensure that every member of the family, whether it's the parents, whether it's the children, whether it's the youth, that their needs are being upheld, that their needs are being taken care of. So putting family first is not just a matter of putting a monument for Independence Day. It's more than that. It's taking into consideration every single family member within the Barbadian context, that everyone is taken care of, that their needs are taken care of, that you serve the family to your fullest capacity, and then you make allocations, proper financial allocations, to serve those communities. This is perhaps the very first time in the history of Barbados we've seen so many homeless persons within the community, to the point that business companies and business agencies are now coming to the public and making requests that is worrisome, the numbers of homelessness that we're seeing, not only from males, but also females, mothers, and their children. These are very serious matters that we need to look at. And the very fact that the ministry that is responsible for people empowerment have not been able to devise a proper plan to deal with homelessness, to deal with family members, single mothers who cannot afford, whether it's housing, whether to adequately take care of their children, rather than to take their children away from them. These are the issues that we need to look at. These are the issues that we need to focus primarily on, putting the family first, not just giving you a vote, but ensuring that the family, which is the center of every society, must be taken care of. Because once you take care of the family, you take care of your society, you take care of the state, because the family is the first unit. You have to take care of the parents. You have to take care of the workers. You have to take care of the children. You have to ensure that the school environment is safe, that they do not have to go to school in an environment that is toxic for their health, that the teachers are in a safe environment as well. We have to look at the youth, not only in terms of the mental health, but to ensure that they contribute adequately to the society. We have to look at it in terms of their receptiveness to crime. We're seeing what is in terms of crime and gun violence within our societies. These are very serious issues
that this human services is failing within this country, and it has been failing for a while. And this is one of the reasons why we are seeing some of the consequences of poor policy development, because it lacks public consultation. It lacks the intervention of the oppositions. It lacks the intervention of other voices, because it seems that when other voices speak, they are usually told to keep quiet. They know what they're doing, but obviously they do not know what they're doing, because had they known, we would not see the kinds of consequences that we're seeing right now. We also have to deal with the very factor, and this is a very serious issue. We have not heard from the minister responsible for housing a very long time. I do not even know if he still has this portfolio. Because we're hearing one minister is talking about homelessness, but we're not hearing anything for homes or what are the possibilities or what will be done in the next 2 years. Proper planning. It's like this government, and of course, the electorate, you need to stop blaming yourself. I think we've passed the stage. They asked us to give them the vote, and many of us did. You've done that. But now we're seeing the difference between politics and governance. And what we're seeing in terms of governance, it is failing rapidly. And I don't know how far or how long we can go ahead with that kind of poor preparation and planning. Because when you have government ministers coming in and saying, well, they did not know this, and they did not have the data, or they did not do the research when they're implementing pieces of legislation, these are very serious issues. These are human lives that we're dealing with. The policy is the abstract part of it, but the impact that these policies will have on individuals, our future generation. How can you have an educational reform without coming to the public, without speaking to parents, without speaking to teachers, without speaking to social interventions or what we call the civil societies? But you're going to draft those policies, you're going to draft those reforms without the persons whose lives will be affected by those reforms. So it's very important that while we reflect on this year and what has passed over this year, that we also have to take some element of responsibility. We have allowed such incompetence to last for too long without us saying a word about it. And I think it's very important to applaud those persons that have come forward, those persons that have stood up, because you're part of the opposition as well, whether you want to accept that or not. Because what an opposition is, it's not only an institution, it is to hold any government into account. We must have a level of transparency. We heard our comrade talking about bills being passed and there's a public holiday the next day. This is strategic. This wasn't done overnight and with the assumption that people will not notice. And we're seeing quite a lot. Persons need to hold themselves as citizens. You need to hold them accountable. If you feel that democracy is being threatened, then you stand up. Yes, the Democratic Labour Party will take our blows. We can take so much. But we're taking it because we know we're doing it on your behalf. If persons were attacking me because of who I am, Felicia Dujon, yeah, it would bother me. But when I recognize that I'm doing it on your behalf, I have to broaden my back. I have to broaden my back because I know at the end of the day, you are the ones whose voices have to be heard. And so we have to be brave in what we do. And when we take a stance, when we decide that we will show up and represent you, we do it with our greatest interest to represent you. Because we do not get a subvention. A subvention that the former Prime Minister Owen Arthur put. And I would hope and pray that this festive season, that the good Prime Minister, that God touches her heart. God touches her heart to recognize, to honor the wishes of late Prime Minister Owen Arthur and why he placed the subversions to ensure that we have a very healthy democracy. It is the taxpayers' money, it is not their money. So we're asking for us to have a society that it is inclusive, that thinks of the rights of every citizen, regardless of gender, regardless of race, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of where you work or what you deem of where you live, that every voice and every citizen's matter, their voice matter. So we're hoping that this administration put family first. Not just the monument we get in town for Independence Day. It has to represent something. We have to see it. Because we cannot have a monument in Bridgetown and then we've seen how much homeless people on it. This is an indicative of what we mean by the failure of poor planning. We can see it around us. And since everyone is given their own personal experience, usually I don't try not to. I live in, in my own world sometimes. But every independence, you remember how busy the supermarkets used to be? You remember when we used to go to the supermarkets, how you would have to go early because people would shop? For some reason, this independence, I decided to go early, and there was barely anyone in the supermarket. It's reflective, brothers and sisters. We can see it. We know it. We know something different is happening. We understand it. Some of us are fearful to speak because we do not want to be victimized. And this is our role as the opposition, is to come. George Street is always open, and we always welcome everyone. So when I saw that article that George Street is in trouble, we're not in trouble. We're still here, and we will continue to be here as long as it takes. So we're appealing to the government to ensure that you put citizens first. You put their interests first, and look down in your hearts. And those are for the cabinet ministers. Look in your hearts. People are hurting. And when we think that we speak about the festival, and that's something I want to tell to every Barbadian. Look out for your brothers and sisters this festival, because not everybody is going to have it as good as you. Look out for them. Share whatever you have. It's not going to be easy for them. In as much as we want to say that we the fifth growing economy, the reality is on the ground. It is on the ground. It is in the communities. We're seeing a lot of community homelessness. We're seeing single mothers seeking refuge. These are the issues that we need to speak about, and these are the issues that we want to look at as well. So our press, our special guest, if you have any questions, feel free to share them if you have any. And thank you again for always accommodating us.
Just two quick questions from me. Firstly, as it relates to the Utilities Amendment Bill 2023, given the concerns that you raised, that you may see that surface regulations for an exempt electricity provider, would be, exempted from the fair trading process. Is this something? Is this some form of activism that the DLP would be taking up coming into the new year as it relates to this amendment itself, and ensure that the process remains intact?
Yes, that is correct. Well, at the moment the bill was introduced, very oddly, it was introduced through the the Senate. And I believe that was because the Minister for Energy now sits in the Senate. But what would normally happen is that the bill would have been sponsored, should have been sponsored from the lower house by the Leader of Government Business, and then it would go up to the Senate. But when you go on the Parliament's website, the notice of the bill was given in the Senate. So you have a bill that will radically affect the way that renewable energy companies will be regulated, but the persons who were elected to represent you have no sight or notice of this bill, because from the Parliament's website, I'm just going from what they have on their website, the bill seems to have started upstairs rather than downstairs where where bills should start, because that's where the debate would happen, and then it would go upstairs. So it was a very odd, situation. So the party will be active on this. We've brought it to the public's attention. Hopefully that everyone can join in and put some pressure. From the Parliament's website, I'm not sure where the bill is going next. So between now and the end of December, they may hurriedly pass it, because the way it was introduced seems very cloak and dagger in the first place. So we'll just have to keep an eye on this to see if the next sitting of the House that this amendment is hurriedly passed. And I assume that they were doing it hoping no one would notice, or we wouldn't pick up on it. But obviously, as a party who does its homework, and we have people, as I said, people are always working volunteer, we were able to spot this, and we would hope that the media will also join in terms of just educating people, letting people know it's there, and to go on the Parliament's website and object. Parliament has a website. Go and make your objections known. They seem to have a habit of taking down objections or comments from people. There's a fact. It recently happened to Niall Harper with the cybersecurity bill. They removed his comments. Somebody else went and put up the same comments. The comments are still there. So you could see that it's obviously intentional because of him. And if the government believes that you're in opposition to them, they don't want to hear you. So I would urge Barbadians to flood the Parliament's website and overwhelm it with their comments and their objections to this amendment.
But I mean, I was trying to determine if there's going to be like a step further. I mean, should it pass through Parliament? Does the DLP intend to, I don't know, launch some sort of protest? What's the plan of action then, if it goes the distance?
Well, the DLP would have to protest it, of course, but by then the bill has passed. You see, this is when we talk about the democracy and consequences of where we are and the perils of our democracy. Because you have 30 people in the House. We could go and march in front of Parliament all we want. If those 30 people do not budge, that's it. If we were in the House now, that's a whole different story. Because you can filibuster, you can move amendments, you can bring, you can't have the surprises, because we would also have sight of the order paper ahead of time. All of these are the things. So these are the consequences of not having an opposition in Parliament. So often now we are trying to respond to things as soon as we get the information to alert the public and to rally the forces. So as much as we can march, which necessarily we will do what we have to do, the reality is the party has to be returned to a place in Parliament. And people have to recognize, by not having the opposition in Parliament, these are the kinds of things that are happening, especially Walter talked about. The fact that the bill for the national insurance, they repealed the whole thing, did it just the day before, sneak it through. If Walter was keeping an eye on it, how we wouldn't know. You probably didn't recognize that. If we weren't keeping an eye on it, you wouldn't know. So we are doing our job as an opposition, because this is exactly what we have to do. Keep an eye on things, bring them, and agitate.
Final question from me. You mentioned that you had to rebuild several branches. Some of them weren't functioning. Could you give us an idea of the numbers that weren't functioning? How many you had to rebuild? How much are still outstanding to be rebuilt?
So we had originally 7 branches or so that weren't functioning. In a 12-month period, we've been able to reduce that to about 3 that we still have to deal with, and we will deal with those in the new year. So that is a tremendous effort in less than 12 months, really, to get those branches up and functioning. And we will do the rest in the new year so that the party is in a fully, how to put it, fully equipped and ready for an election, as we get ourselves ready for an election.
Okay. And a candidate selection, you said that that's gonna, be finalized next year. So do you have any candidates at all? Because the last time we spoke, you said that that process would have begun in earnest much earlier. So I mean, do you have no candidates at this point? Is that the case?
Well, you know, I can't. Right? I can't tell you that. I cannot out people in that way until they are ready to come to the fore. The reality is, the way that the process works in the Democratic Labour Party, and the word is democratic. There is a candidate selection committee. That committee will meet. They take input from the branches, so it's a process. Then once that's done, person that comes before the councils, so all the arms of the party are involved in this process. It's not a one-man process, me just picking up somebody and saying, you use the candidate. That's not how it works. There's a democracy to this process so that we can ensure that we get the best people. There are people lining up, but I would not out people in that way until they are ready. But know that the process is beginning in earnest. When I mentioned that to you, I was doing some of the hunting around, so the process has been continuing, but now this is the actual official process where branches will be alerted to begin their if you like, their official on-paper search. But obviously people have been engaging, people have been coming forward, but this is the official, how to put it, this is the official institutionalization of that process. Some of the criteria are pretty basic. We are looking for people who have Barbados at heart, people who care about the country. Persons will be required to submit their CVs. They'll be required to submit plans for the constituency. They'll be required to submit a police certificate of character. That's basic for any job. Why should it? You want to be an MP? We're going through the same process. This is supposed to be one of the highest jobs in the land. You have to go through the rigor of that process to be a Democratic Labour Party candidate.
And I know I said final questions two questions ago, but the fact that you had 7 branches, you said, that were pretty much not functioning, defunct. I guess just listening to that number would be worrying to most persons. Was that symptomatic of a deeper issue, and have you solved that issue? Because
well, it's not. It's just symptomatic of a reality. I don't know what would you expect after a party was beaten twice. Let me be real. Let me talk real. What would you expect to happen to an organization that was kicked down twice in that way? You think that they're gonna wake up the next morning and everything is magic and everything is all hunky-dory? Of course not. Of course not. This is probably because I'm being honest about it and open, but this is a reality. The Democratic Labour Party was kicked twice and badly. Therefore, it has to rebuild. There has to be a rebuilding process. We have been focusing on it. We have worked hard. The fact that we moved it from 7 to 3 in less than 12 months, that's amazing. Because you're trying to move a 60-year-old institution at the speed of light with councils and executive and organs and members and branch, all sorts of things. So that is a demonstration of the ability of this institution to function. As I've said, if we cannot turn around the Democratic Labour Party, how am I expected to turn around government? If I can turn around and do that in less than 12 months, that tells you that we have the ability, as Sister Felicia talks about, to plan and execute. Because you can't reduce from 7 to get to 3 just by sitting down on it. With no funding. That tells you that there's serious work going on in mobilization on the ground and getting our members active. If I told you in the last 12 months we completed the full upgrade and commercialization of this place, that tells you that we can function. That tells you if you put a school rehabilitation program in my hand, you know what's going to happen? This school's going to get rehabilitated. You will not have Luther Thorne and Hill and St. John on your hand, because I know how to rehabilitate a building and a structure. I know how to make it work. That is the reality. You had a Minister of Education who promised at the last this summer, all the schools going to be ready. So if all the schools are ready, how all these schools aren't functioning? This is the reality. You know, these are the things that we have to focus on. Two things that I want you to take away. I talked about the new economy, and I've said this before, but maybe it hasn't come through. I'm going to say it again. The Democratic Labour Party will support a geographical indicator for the rum industry in Barbados, because the rum industry in Barbados can generate about $1 billion per year for the economy of this country. We're talking about $1 billion industry. The government does not seem to want to support that. The Democratic Labour Party, I want to go on record. We commit ourselves to providing a geographical indicator to protect Barbados rum. Barbados rum should only be made in Barbados, cured in Barbados, using Barbados water, using Barbados sugar. It will not be molasses. It cannot be cured in France or anywhere else. And if you try that, it is not Barbados rum. Guyana has gone ahead, and they have a geographical indicator for Guyanese rum. Why are we still lagging around? Because we have a government that does not understand how a new economy should be built, that does not understand, obviously, what the geographical indicator is, and is unwilling to educate itself about how to build that new industry. But I commit to building that, because there are two things for this. One, we have to reclaim ownership of an industry that literally our blood and sweat and tears are in. Why would you not protect it? All of our ancestors died on these plantations making cane. Now we have a chance to make money from the rum industry, not from raw cane anymore, from the rum industry, to pay for the same roads in the schools and the hospitals. Why are we not doing it? Is there something the government's not telling us that they can't roll out a geographical indicator for the rum industry? On top of that, one of the things that I want us to take away, this party will commit. I've talked about primary education. People talk about how we ain't got the policies. You want some policies? Here's one. We will start something, if we were government, called First Start. First Start, the point will be to provide interventions for at-risk families, to deal with the same reading and numeracy programs in the communities, to provide a healthy parental outcomes, to provide toddler and nursery intervention and spaces for those kids, and to link community programs and schools in the communities. So this goes back to Sister DeJohn's point, family first. So the Democratic Party commitment to a family is not just about a monument in National Hero Square. We have been at this from day one. David Thompson has been at this, and we are continuing to build this. So when we talk about families first, there is a real policy initiative and thinking between that. So First Start would be something that this party would put in place for community-based initiatives to help families to deal with reading. So when we talk about education reform, you have to think, how are you reforming the education system within the communities? It ain't just at schools, you know, because the child can't read, can't have social development skills. It doesn't. That's not a school thing. Something is going on in that community. So the education reform has to be attached to a broader intervention at a community-based level, where you have reading, support for parents, support for communities, counselors in schools, counselors in the community. You have the return of the district nurse who used to come around and check. You remember them days? Check for the children. The fact that children used to be able to go for the dentist from the schools. I remember my first dental appointment was through the school, because it used to happen through the school. You were connected to the clinic. My first eye appointment was through the school, because obviously the schools were early interventions for these things. Your child can't hear. All of this used to happen through the school system. Now, the clinics hardly working. Polyclinics don't have resources. no nurses in the communities anymore. So First Start will be our way to reconnect these systems and connect all of them to ensure that the families get the support that they need in this country.
Your pulse. Oh, you were given the pulse.
Yeah. All right, any other questions? All right, well, I want to thank the members of the media. I want to thank our viewers online for joining us. And I really want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, a wonderful Christmas, a blessed Christmas, and all the best for the new year. And I would say as much ham and black cake as you can eat, because I know I will be eating my fair share. So thank you for joining us today.